So we will explore possible central idea statements or thesis statements for the machine steps. Now, if I was going to be doing a text-only analysis, obviously you can have your central ideas. We can say I had put them up here in our central idea brainstorming spot. Anything about technology and the destruction of humanity, the the harm it can do to personal relationships. We see that with Kuno and Vashti. Um, then we had people relying too heavily on technology will result in the destruction of humanity. That can obviously be when the machine is falling apart and all these issues are happening. We can also do a government because from just the text, it's obvious that the government started to rely very heavily on the machine when they can't even answer questions or requests from the people anymore. Um, the government just let the machine handle everything from the social programs like food, education, um, any other banking, you could probably say, because technically, if everyone was working through the machine is paying them. So everything world leaders left the machine to basically run the world. This is everywhere around the world, remember. Um, your historical analysis could be something along the lines of E.M. Forrester's influence on all the technology that was coming about. So, E.M. Forrester witnessed the rise of the technologies which fueled the industrial revolution. So for this one, we would just be talking about how the factory assembly line would have influenced his writing, because that was how everyone was just focused on a specialty part of the machine. He was drawing a connection or a warning. Hey guys, if you keep specializing in everything, no one's going to know how to fix the whole, and then we're going to have issues. Cultural studies. So your political elements of society to uncover the unconscious ideologies of its members. You could say here the 1900s, the early 1900s saw an influx of innovative technologies that made lives easier. The culture of the time was that technology was beneficial to, we'll just say beneficial. Um, there was not a lot of questioning when it came to introducing new technologies into homes, such as well, no, this was early 1900s, so the television was 1950s. Microwaves, electricity, all those things, people were just like, yeah, bring it in. Um, which now, obviously, we wouldn't have questioned it because, like, obviously, we all have electricity in our homes. But from E.M. Forrester's point of view, he was probably like, I don't know, guys, maybe we should think about this. So that's what we would say. So remember that not every theory is going to fit with every story. With the critical race theory, this theory would have came about in the 1960s, which is roughly 60 years prior to E.M. Forrester writing this story. But we could say this idea of exclusion and pushing people out of a society, that could be something like the homeless people. You could say that this is a story. The minority group would be people that disagreed with the machine, and the majority group would be those that participated and worshiped the machine. You could say, well, this story was published in 1909, and critical race theory came about in the 1960s. One could say those that um, disagree with those that question. Those that question the machine are viewed as the society's minority groups. Those in the majority would be the citizens that worship the machine. All right, then you have your feminist. I mean, obviously, we could do a lot with this one because Vashti's a woman. Once you got a woman protagonist, you could go crazy with your feminist theory here. We could do. All right, this one's kind of controversial. But what if we say something like technology actually brought Vashti to a really broke her glass ceiling, you could say. So, like, the glass ceiling is this term used for like women in the workplace where eventually they hit a ceiling and they're not going to get any more pay or they're not going to get a promotion. That's like as far as they'll go. So, and one of the reasons, obviously, you could one reason women might be discriminated against in the workplace is motherhood. So, like, you're on the fast course, you're a young 20 something woman working through a company, and you want to be like the CEO. And then everything's going really well. Then you find out you're pregnant, and now you're passed up for this promotion because the employer knows that you're going to be out of work giving birth and then home with this baby. So it can really um, mess up women's career tracks, right? Unfortunately, obviously, you would say this isn't fair, but that's just the way things are. So we could say that uh, the Forrester's science fiction story is viewed as a warning of what can happen when society relies too heavily on technology. However, a feminist could argue that the machine was a, what if we say, a catapult for women's equality. Okay, and that would be the thesis. And then what I would do for my body paragraphs, I would say, like, um, however, a feminist could argue that the machine was a catapult for women's equality. I'm not going to say, no, however. And then I'll say, Forrester uses, now I want to choose my literary element. So we could say characterization, because we have Vashti, and normally people would be like, oh, look at her. She doesn't want to see her son. She'd rather stay home and work. But if Vashti was a man, would the reader have judged her as much, right? So we could say that maybe Forrester uses Vashti's character to show readers that technological innovation could assist women with bridging, assist women in breaking the glass ceiling. So now I would focus my body paragraphs on this conflict, right? Vashti's conflict, character versus self. She doesn't know if she wants to go see her son because she wants to stay in her room where she feels safe and happy. She doesn't want to make this sacrifice for her offspring. And so now the other paragraphs, right? Body paragraph 1, the body paragraphs would focus on the ways the machine empowered women. So, like, you could talk about the nurseries. The nurseries were a way for the were a way to provide women the opportunity to return to their job description in the machine, to their jobs, to their careers, something like that, right? And then the other one, um, we could talk about the physicality part of it, right? So we have the thing about the mother. So no more motherhood holding women back, right? The machine's helping us with that. Then you could talk about in another paragraph the physical strength thing, right? Because let's be obvious, men are inherently physically stronger than women, right? But now we have a society where the machine is doing all the physical labor. So we could say, and that is a good one from a good example from the text would be the carriage, the train ride, the airship ride, when the guy couldn't even pick up his book. So we could say also, um, the machine mitigated the stereotype that have that men are biologically built for specific types of manual labor jobs. From a feminist perspective, the machine allowed for women and men to be on equal physical playing fields, thus bringing women closer to equality. Something like that. So those would be body paragraphs focusing, and this is a controversial theory because I'm making a point to say that, yeah, the machine like destroyed humanity and everything, but right before it destroyed humanity, things were super good for women. That would be your example. And then the Marxist approach, obviously, this idea of homelessness and people being excluded, we could say that the machine created a society where you were only valuable if you contributed to the machine. So, like Kuno, he would be the example for this. The story shows what the story, we could say the machine stops, reveals what can happen in a capitalist society that that be, that relies on technology to exclude those that weren't the ideal citizen. And then you could say this is seen with Kuno because Kuno did not fit the mold and he was excommunicated. Kuno's excommunication from the machine develops the idea of a ruling class, um, a ruling class hoarding the resources through a through technological means. So for this one, you would basically talk about Kuno and his homeless situation and how even though it's never mentioned that there are elites, we have to assume that there are people running the show. Like you can't assume that everyone in this society was living in those same rooms, right? So for this analysis, I would focus on answering the question of like who was behind all this. There had to be some group of wealthy elites running that created the machine in the first place. Someone There had to be some wealth and power that was using this machine. You could be as creative as you wanted and imagine this world where, or you could say that the machine itself was like the ruling. And if you weren't going to benefit the machine, if you had nothing to offer it, and like with Kuno wasn't going along with it. He didn't believe in it, right? So then if you weren't believing in the machine, the ruling, aka the ruling class, it was going to get rid of you. You were no use to it anymore. So that would be a Marxist. The reader response could be anything that you wanted to do. So we could say readers today are especially disturbed by the machine stops, especially are especially disturbed by the machine stops because of rapid developments in artificial intelligence and the government's lack of regulations. And then I would talk about our article here from the Institute of Life. And I would say AI researchers are identifying the dangers that may arise from AI. And for this one, I would try. So I'm on page 32 of the active reading, and I put in the Institute of Life's letter. Elon Musk was one of the signers of this. Bill Gates was not. Neither was the Google CEO, original creators, Sergey Brin and Larry Page. The Google creator founders, Larry and Sergey, did not sign this letter. But over 20,000 leading AI researchers, professors, CEOs, engineers, students, and on the front, other people on this front line of AI progress, in May or in April of 2023, they were like, you guys need to pause this. This is crazy. You guys have to pause it all for 6 months. I'm like, government's get a handle on it, and let's all get some rules and regulations in place. That was April of 2023, and just so there was no pause. Nobody paused. Everybody says, no, never mind. So you could do a reader response, and maybe. So one thing from this open letter that reminded me of the story, we recommend a robust independent auditing regime for models that are general purpose, trained on larger amounts of computer, or intended for use in circumstances likely to impact the rights of the well-being of individuals, communities, and societies. Basically, they're going to go on to say how there's going to be there's all these companies doing AI models, and no one knows exactly how they're going to react to each other. So let's say you're Walmart and you bought one AI model from one company and then another AI model from another. No one knows how those two AI models are going to interact. So that's super questionable. You could see that we could compare that to the story with no one specializing or no one knowing how the machine worked holistically. You could make this comparison that in today we have all these companies making their own little AI models, and no one knows how it's going to interact holistically. That's definitely, I'm going to put that. In, I would say, in April of 2023, 20,000 leading experts in the AI field wrote a letter to developments, pause developments for 6 months. The letter was ignored, and readers of each text may find the parallels concerning. So I would do one paragraph in the letter. Experts discuss concerns surrounding what could happen when two AI models built from different companies interact. This is similar to the story um, when workers were only familiar with specialized tasks on the machine. Without knowing how technology works as a whole, developers are setting humanity up for failure. So that would be an example of how I'm tying in that letter to the story, the fiction story. So that would be a nonfiction text because it's a letter that people actually wrote with real concerns. It's an opinion letter, and then the text is obviously the fiction. From the psychoanalysis, you could just give Vashti. We want to diagnose Vashti with something. We could say Vashti and the rest of humanity experienced a uh, our we could say experienced the effects of long-term isolationism. And then you could do, if I go to like psychology med, or I said psychological effects of long-term isolationism, right? And now you could go down a route and you could do a whole essay about that it wasn't the technology, or well, obviously it was the technology, but you could say the technology brought about some type of psychosis towards the society. Um, so post traumatic stress, whatever you'd want to pick. Let's see. Feeling excluded, cut off, having a sense of being misunderstood or unheard, high levels of inflammation, and other health problems. We definitely saw that. With her white as fungus, um, the guy on the train not being able to even bend over. So you could say readers can readers could diagnose those living in the machine with a antisocial, what if we say with an antisocial personality disorder? We could say with a plethora of health, of physical and emotional health problems. So if you were doing a psychoanalysis, you would then do one body paragraph about Vashti's unhealthy dependency on the machine and her pushing away her only son. You could do it causes antisocial behaviors where she was when she yelled at the air flight attendant lady for like touching her shoulder. You could say Vashti can be characterized as hostile. Um, and then for the health problems, you could give the example of the airship guy losing his physical abilities, his muscle strength, the muscle weakness. We could talk about Vashti not having any teeth and how that probably impacted her health overall. Like, you could even say, what's the life expectancy of the people living in this machine without vitamin D? If you wanted to get a little research to say, what could be the effects, the health effects of a person that never gets any vitamin D? Because they're all inside now. So that would be an example of a psychoanalysis. You're just diagnosing these characters with some type of ailment. And then you would provide evidence from the text as how we see that. And going, and also a little bit, you would want to find one research article. So what doctors' patients knew about social isolation. That probably would be a good one. If you wanted to use one like that, I'll put it in here for you if you wanted to. So this would be an example of, and it's from AMA. It depends. Sometimes you might get teachers that are very strict with where your journals are coming from. An example of a source for this analysis would be here. There you go. All right. And that would be our types of literary theories we could explore in The Machine Stops.